So, I first met Bill Crow long before he met me. I was a member of New York local 802 Musicians Union, and I'd get the monthly newsletter in the mail. And of course, I would immediately turn to the last page to a column called The Band Room. That was Bill's column. And in it, he told story after story of inside jokes, one liners, and some of the most entertaining information about musicians, their lives, and their unique humor throughout many, many years. Ultimately, he published them all in a book called Jazz Anecdotes, and then he published some more of them in Jazz Anecdotes second time around. He has also published a personal account of his own career from Birdland to Broadway, scenes from a jazz life. Hailing from the Pacific Northwest, Bill began studies with his mother on the piano and soon added a bewildering battery of instruments to his arsenal. So when he went to his distinguished military career, his weapons of choice were, of course, the baritone horn, the valve trombone, the sousaphone, and the trap drum set. He played with the 51st Army Band at Fort Lewis, Washington, and then with the 2nd Army Band at Fort Meade, Maryland. Sometime around 1950, he moved to New York and somehow found himself with a rented plywood bass and playing a summer gig in the Adirondacks in Lake Tupper, New York. The rest, as they say, is history. But history is key because Bill set out towards a long and happy career as a bass player, largely by hanging around Charlie's Tavern, a favorite New York City watering hole frequented by many working musicians at the time. Bill somehow kept track of the memories of these days and of the stories he heard, along with the jokes, one liners gathered from the camaraderie and often times quirky personalities of people in our profession. He placed them all in the aforementioned books. Now, Bill has played with so many people, it's dizzying to read the list, but I'm going to just read a few of them. Stan Getz, Jerry Mulligan, Claude Thornhill, Terry Gibbs, Marion McPartlin. That was a trio with the Joe Morello on drums. Al Cohn, Zoot Sims, Clark Terry, Bob Brookmeyer, and even with Duke Ellington in a thrill of a lifetime concert at Lewiston Stadium in 1958. In the summer of 1962, he toured Russia with the Benny Goodman Band. And that's just scratching the surface, folks. Here's one fine gentleman that you can honestly say he has played with anybody who is anybody, and even some of the others. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Bill Crow. So at this point, we discovered that Bill's connection wasn't complete, and we couldn't hear what he was saying. So we had to make do and figure out some kind of convoluted way that we could hook up his audio. And this took a little time and a little frustration, but we got it back on track and ended up starting the recording again in the middle of some of the beginning of the conversation. And here he started talking about when he started writing columns in the local 802 Musicians Union newsletter about telling his stories and jazz anecdotes that ended up basically the material for his two books. So here we go back to Bill. What, write them down, or you're working from memory with when you compile things like this?
Funny thing was when I first started that column for the 802 paper Allegra, the president John Glazell, we all got into office on the same ticket,
Right.
and he said, "How'd you like to write a column for the paper every month?" And I said, "Yes, I know exactly the column I want to write. Guys are always getting together and telling these stories on each other, and somebody always says somebody should write these down." I said, "Let me be the guy, you know."
There you go. That's
So
perfect.
the first 2 months, I think, I wrote stories that I remembered either having been there when it happened or somebody told me, and everybody got the idea immediately and started sending me stories. And I've been doing that since, what was that, 1982? I think was the first issue. I've been doing that every month since 1982, and I haven't had to go looking for stories yet. I skim the internet now and then because there's some good stories get told on Facebook. But if anything funny happens, I hear about it right away.
Many of them are kind of inside, inside the industry stories, right? But
Yeah, yeah.
a lot of them are universal.
It's like somebody complained to Al Cohn one time that the drummer he was working with, when he played with sticks, he rushed, and when he played with brushes, he slowed down. And Al told him, "Tell him to play with one of each."
Just for balance. There you go. Yeah, I mean it is true. Musicians hang, after a gig or before a gig or when there's not a gig, and the first thing they start doing is telling stories, from either years ago or from weird things that happen. I can remember one of my teachers, in fact, came into New York on a gig, and he was a trumpet player. He was a big band um, date, and Jimmy Maxwell was I guess on the third trumpet chair, and my teacher was going in, and he was late. He was caught up in traffic or something. And he was late, and he ran up. The band was already playing. He ran up on stage. He pulled out his horn. He sat next to Jimmy Maxwell, and he leaned over to Jimmy, and he said, "How long have you been playing?" And Jimmy said, "Oh, about 30 years. How about you?" So,
Terry Gibbs told a funny
today.
one. Terry Gibbs told a funny one on Jack Sheldon. He said that he had never met Jack before. He had this dream band that he rehearsed a lot and played a few gigs out in California. And everybody loved the band so much that they didn't take off much. But one time he had a little tour, and Stan Fishelson couldn't make it, so he recommended. Isn't that terrible? His name just slipped right out of my mind. Jack Sheldon.
Oh, Jack Sheldon, yeah.
Yeah. So Jack, he's sitting next to all these heavies, that are playing in the trumpet section. He's not too sure of his sight reading, so he's being real careful. They got their first gig is out in a ballpark in Arizona, I think, and so Jack is really hawking the part, trying to stay with these guys. All of a sudden, the wind comes up and blows his part off of the bandstand, and so he jumps down on the ground, and he's still playing, reading from where it's lying, and the wind keeps blowing it out into center field. So Jack ends up playing the end of the tune in center field.
There you go. Very funny.
There's a couple of questions in the chat, if I could interrupt.
Sure.
Bill. So Bill, one question we have is from Richard, and he asks, do you do anything different on bass when there is no piano?
Yeah, well, my way of playing the bass is listening and trying to find notes that fit both the harmony that's in my head and what I'm hearing, And so if I'm playing with a piano player, I try to follow his choice of chords. But if there is no piano player, there's still chords being implied by the other horns, and I just choose bass notes that seem to fit that,
That you really have to stay on top of it for that. That's a second decision.
Well, it's good practice. I mean, all music is about listening, and if you get in the habit of listening all the time, it gives you a lot of incentive to play well.
Here, absolutely.
Okay, great. And then there's another question. Let's see. Glenwood, I believe is his name, asks, will you be blessing us with some live bass playing tonight? So that's something to think about.
I don't know. I've been playing by myself a lot because I can't play with others with the virus, So
Sure.
it's more of an exercise than a pleasure, I must say.
Sure. And then Stephen Hecht, I see that in the chat you are writing Bill. I'm not sure if you're trying to ask a message and you're having a technical error. Stephen, if you want to unmute yourself to ask, feel free to.
Or is he sending us a bill?
Thanks, Jackie. No, actually, I always have trouble with this 21st century stuff. I wanted to ask Bill about all the changes that have occurred in jazz over the years that you've been playing. Pick up some albums today, and everything's electronic, and there's fusion, and there's this and that. I come out of the 50s, and I'm just wondering, what are your thoughts about how jazz has evolved from, say, the
Well, it's like somebody asked Joe Puma one time, "Where are you from, Joe?" And Joe said, "The past, mostly." I started out when I was a little kid. I was trying to play the trumpet in 6th grade, and my music teacher called me into his house, walking by his house on the way home, and he called me in, and he played Louis Armstrong's West End Blues for me. And I thought, man, if I want to be a trumpet player, that's the kind of trumpet player I want to be. That's just beautiful. So that was my introduction to jazz. My mother was a musician, but she wasn't at all interested in jazz. I learned Lawrence Tibbett and John Charles Thomas and people like that from her. But as soon as I found out that there were records of these guys like Louis Armstrong, I started haunting the little electric store in our small town that had a few records. You could go play them and see if you wanted to buy them. It was really nice. And I started collecting records with my allowance. They were between 35 and 75 cents for 78, I think. And I'd take a new record home and play it over and over and over again till I just knew every inch of it. And I was introduced to all of these wonderful musicians from the Armstrong period, and then Duke Ellington, and then I didn't get into Count Basie right early. I didn't hear any of those records, but I did hear people like Eddie Miller and Jack Teagarden. I was in love with him, and then as I got on into high school and started adding to my collection, I started learning more and more about all the different possibilities that were out there, the big bands and all that. And when I started playing myself, first I started in as a drummer and then a valve trombone player, and I just was emulating all of those people that I heard on records. In the Army, I met some guys that could really play, and they taught me some things. And when I got back out of the Army, I met a drummer that was really, really into jazz in a wonderful way, a guy named Buzzy Bridgeford. And he introduced me to a tenor player in Seattle named Freddie Greenwell, who, when I first heard Al Cohen, I thought, oh, he sounds a lot like Freddie, you know. And it was all like middle of the road swing, big band jazz, small group jazz that was melodic, and the tunes were standard tunes that I knew from the radio. So when I got into the Army and first found out about Charlie Parker, I thought, gee, I'm not sure I really like that. It doesn't sound like Johnny Hodges, you know. But then I got used to his sound and really fell in love with it. And by the time I got out of the Army, I was trying to play all those tunes. Well, of course, my moldy fig cornet player friend in the Army could say, well, you can't like that music and like Louis Armstrong too. And I said, why not? You know, it's all nice.
Like it all, sure.
Yeah. So when I finally got through the bebop era and learned all those tunes, and then Ornette Coleman showed up, and a lot of freedom players and all that. And I wasn't really too interested in that music, mainly because I was a bass player by then, and a bass player really doesn't have too much to do during that kind of music, because any note is okay. And I like music where there are choice notes that you're looking for that you really want to play. So I wasn't too interested in learning that music, because it seemed like it was an exercise for the horn players to get far out, and I was expected to stay around the roots wherever they were, and I really preferred more melodic harmonic music. I still do.
You know, we have a few sort of celebrity types, at least to our industry. I just want to acknowledge Lou Delgado, who was with Saturday Night Live
Oh,
for 25 years. Lou,
yeah.
you want to unmute? There you go.
Yeah. Hey, Bill, how you doing?
How you doing, Lou?
Very well. Staying in the house, just like you.
You and me.
Yeah.
All of us.
Just the thing about Bill, my buddy Bob Keller and I did an Alan Zoot tribute album a number of years ago, and we had a gig at the Deerhead in I'm forgetting stuff, down in Delaware Water Gap, and the bass player that did the record was Tony Marino, and he had something. So I talked to Bob, and he said, "Why don't we get Bill Crow for the weekend? I think we did 2 nights." And I said, "That'd be great. You know, if does he want to come out?" And if, of course he did, and he played great. He played his ass off and told great Al Cohn stories, and we had a great time. I remember that.
That was really a nice night. Yeah,
Yeah,
I enjoyed that.
A lot of fun. Yeah, it was great to play with you.
Yeah, I talk to Bob on the phone every once in a while.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, once in a while. Yeah, so it's cool.
That's great. Great to see you, Lou. Stay safe.
Yeah, you too. Take care.
Yeah, keep in touch. We also have the great Giacomo Gates, who was
No
one
kidding.
of our also one of our guests at the Summer Jazz Cafe a couple of years ago, I think.
Yeah, I was one of his early bass players.
You want to say hello, Giacomo? Unmute
Sure.
yourself. Got to
How you
unmute
doing,
yourself.
Giacomo?
You should unmute yourself.
I didn't know it was possible to mute Giacomo.
You need to. There you go.
There I is. Yeah, Bill, it's great to see you. Great to hear you. My comment, no questions, but I had been knocked out that I did several dates with Bill Crow, and he always lit up the bandstand musically and personally. Great stories. We always had a lot of fun, and the beat was large.
Yeah, those were nice gigs. I enjoyed doing that.
That's all I got. I'm going to hang out and listen.
We enjoyed you here at the cafe. We'll do it again sometime.
All right.
All right. And one other, we've got one of our previous guests and one of our favorite musicians and educators that work with Jazz Arts Project with our Academy program. Rodham Schwartz is on also, who has a question. Why don't you ask it directly, Rodham? You've got to turn your mic on, though. You have to unmute yourself. Why didn't it unmute? There you go.
Can you hear me?
Now I got you.
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Yeah. How you doing, Mr. Crow? You remember a
I'm
gig
doing
we
fine.
did with Houston Person and Annette St. John's in White
Oh,
Plains
yeah.
about 10 years ago or something like that?
That was nice. Yeah, I always enjoyed playing with Houston.
Yeah. Anyhow, I had a question. The question was because when you were coming up, you played in clubs mostly, I would imagine, right? And nowadays there aren't a lot of jazz clubs around. The scene is sort of different. There's concerts, and do you miss the interaction with the audience that you had in clubs versus the type of scene that there is nowadays?
Oh yeah, it's always nice to play for people that come to listen. You know, it's hard to play if they come and don't listen. But I've been lucky with most of the places I've played that the audiences came to hear the music.
You, Bill, you had some um, early experiences with Jerry Mulligan, right? Right, and from Claude Thornhill days, wasn't he with Claude Thornhill for a while
Yeah,
as
I
well?
went from I did 6 months with Stan Getz, and then he went back to his original bass player Teddy Kotick. So Teddy had been working with Thornhill, so I just went over and took the job he left,
Swap jobs.
and I played with Claude for one whole summer doing one-nighters mostly. We did some weeks down in New Orleans, but the rest of it was one-nighters.
Great arrangements there, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. We had well, he wrote well himself,
Gil
and
Evans
he
was on
had
that writing
those
staff.
early Gil Evans things that Gil had done for him, and then there was another guy, Obi Massengill, wrote some
Yep,
stuff for him that was nice.
yep. Yeah, I did a transcription of that Arab dance that Gil
Oh yeah,
did, um, and it was just a fantastic treatment of it. It's terrific.
yeah. And it's funny. He had one chart that the guy had just written one chorus of a tune, real old-fashioned tune that my mother used to sing called "Just a Wearyin' for You," and it was so beautifully orchestrated, but it was just one chorus. So we used to make a medley out of it. We'd play some other dance tunes and
That's what
stick
you
that
do.
in there just for the sound of it.
Sure. Glenwood has a question. Who were Bill's influences on bass? Question mark. Mingus?
Well, when I first got this drummer talked me into being a bass player. We had a job up in Tupper Lake, New York, and the instrumentation was drums, piano, trumpet, and saxophone. And I went up and sat in with him on trombone, and he got the boss to hire me. And then as soon as I was hired, he went out and rented a bass and put it on the bandstand and said, "Whenever you're not playing the trombone, you got to try to play the bass. I can't stand playing without a bass player." So the boss thought that 3 rhythm instruments was too many. So that was how I got started playing bass. And they would say, try to get that long sound like Ray Brown, So I had heard Ray, but the guy that I had heard that I was really impressed with was Oscar Pettiford, who was around town a lot then, and he was playing with other people, and he had his own band now and then at this little place called Le Downbeat on 54th Street. And I just thought he had everything. He had a big sound and beautiful ideas. And when I tried to play it, he was the one I thought of. I tried to get his sound. And then every time I'd see somebody that seemed to be not working as hard as I was, I'd say, "What are the, what's the difference?" Well, they had a fingering system, and I had just made up my own. So I started watching people like Percy Heath and Al McKibben and people like that seemed to finger the instrument easily. And then finally, I got into so much trouble that I went to Fred Zimmerman and started studying, and he straightened me right out. It took me a couple of years, but I did get a regular fingering system.
Yeah, you know no bass player in the rhythm section. I ran into that years ago when I was playing in the Catskills. It was one of the
Yeah.
hotels. One of the hotels, for some reason, the owner just didn't think that anybody heard the bass. So why hire somebody that nobody's going to hear, right? And we all hated it, of course. And the piano player had to do double duty. Um,
Sure. Well,
but
when Dave McKenna was the house piano player at Eddie Condon's, they would only hire a bass player on the weekend when it was busy. So it meant that he had at least Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday with no bass player, and then Thursday, Friday, and Saturday he'd have a bass player. So he got in
right,
the habit of playing those walking bass lines in his left hand, and it got to be part of his solo style.
sure. I just want to introduce my organization's development director at this point, Carmen Valentine, and he's here somewhere. There he is. You have to unmute yourself.
Good evening, everybody. Hi, Bill. Great to meet you.
Hi, Carmen.
This is great listening to your stories and speaking to someone who has worked with so many great people. So thank you for being here tonight. Really, really excited.
I didn't have to go anywhere.
And I have to say, like you, this is my first time actually doing Zoom on my computer. I've been doing it on my phone for the past 2 months, 3 months. So I'm doing new technology. So forgive me for being a little slow. Just want to say, everyone, good evening. Please take an opportunity to support Jazz Arts Project. We are doing so many great things, and unfortunately, we can't be in a room together doing this as a talking jazz series, which would be great, which we would typically do. And of course, we would be typically getting together, performing at Jazz in the Park at this time, and also doing the Summer Jazz Cafe series. So unfortunately, we're not able to do those things at this time, but we will be planning for them in the future. Hopefully 2021, we'll be able to get those off the ground. But for now, we're gonna be enjoying each other's company online, and we need your support. Those are revenue generating events that we do, which help bring resources to support our Jazz Arts Academy. So please take an opportunity to take a moment to give. You can give to us at jazzartsacademy.org/donate, and I'll put that in the chat room for you guys to check out. But in the meantime, this has been great getting together every week. So we really thank you for supporting us. And for those who are new to us, please welcome and invite others to join us every Monday. Thanks, Joe.
Thanks so much, Carmen. Now back to our show. What's ahead for you? Any projects lined up after the reawakening or whatever it is
Well,
we're going to do?
of course, everything in March, April, May, June got canceled, and now I've been crossing things off that I had booked in August and September. I think I just crossed off one in October, so God knows when it's going to come back to playing for people again.
Yeah, it will. It will come back, and we'll be in there with you, and hopefully you'll be down here playing with us. Are there any other questions in the chat list, or anyone else would like to ask some questions, or hear, another story, maybe?
Would you like to play that tuba solo? It's the only recorded tuba solo I've ever made.
Wow. Okay. The multi-instrumentalist that Bill is.
This was a project that Dick Sudhalter and Bob DeRoe and Barbara Lee put together. It's 2 CDs of Hoagie Carmichael music, but this one cut I played tuba on, so I was kind of pleased to be able to get a solo recorded.
You got it, Melissa?
Yep, got it.
You can have your steady cooing, I'm as free as birds above. With a brand of modern wooing, come easy, go easy, love. Never brings you care and sorrow, that's the love I'm thinking of. Here today and gone tomorrow, come easy, go easy, love. Not the kind to bring regret from kissing, happy-go-lucky, not the kind that you forget while reminiscing. Why keep one society if happiness you're thinking of? You can have variety with come easy, go easy, love. Not the kind to bring regret from kissing, not the kind that you forget while reminiscing. Why keep one society if happiness you're thinking of? You can have variety with come easy, go easy love. Come easy, go easy love, huh? Come easy, go easy love, huh? Come easy, go easy love.
That's great. Yes.
That was
Nice
funny.
tone. Nice tone on that tuba there, Bill. You know, who was the whistler?
That was Barbara. The musicians there were Barbara Lee, Dick Sudhalter on cornet, Eddie Locke on drums, and the two guitars were Frank Vignola and
So James?
who else? James Cirillo.
James Cirillo, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, years ago, I'm not sure it still exists anymore, but there used to be a sort of like a category in the union book for whistlers, right?
Yeah.
There were some people who actually, you know, that was their thing. They were a whistler. They'd be called for a record date or a commercial
Yeah.
date or something to whistle.
Yeah. I think the best whistler I ever knew was Toots Thielemans.
There you go.
He could whistle bebop right on the nose. Very good pitch.
Right. Bill Shear has a question. What is your favorite instrument?
Oh, I love the bass. I love the tuba. I also love to hear people that play the cello well. That instrument really thrills me.
It's a beautiful.
The funny thing is, when I was a kid, the music that we had in the house, other than my mother's piano, was an old Edison cylinder phonograph. And there was a recording of somebody playing the Swan on the cello, and the recording was so bad I thought I hated cellos till I heard a real one and realized what a fine instrument it was.
Yeah, well, like the commercial says, there's always room for cello.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. What? There's another part of this question. Did the math? I don't understand it. Did the math hisses at
Ooh.
Mead like different kinds of music? Math.
I don't understand the question.
I don't either.
That question is from Bill Shear. I think it was a typo. Bill, would you mind unmuting yourself to ask your question?
Did you?
Hi, Bill.
Yeah, it's the map. Can
Hi.
you hear me?
We can hear you. We don't
Yeah.
understand what you're
Yeah,
saying.
I'm sorry before I bad typing there. Did the math whizzes at Fort Meade prefer different kinds of music?
Oh, Fort
You
Meade.
were at Fort Meade, and that's Spook
Oh,
Palace.
yeah.
That's the NSA and all. And I'm wondering if that, say they went after a different kind of music, more mathematically complex or anything different.
Oh, no, that was an army band. You know, we played marches and stuff and concert band music. And we also had a little jazz band that played service clubs. That was where I got started playing the valve trombone. I would be playing drums for the little band, and I'd keep the valve trombone on a stand next to the drums. And when I could get a chorus, I'd grab the horn, and the trumpet player would play the time on the cymbal while I kept the feet going on the drums, and I would get a couple of choruses in that way.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill.
You bet.
There was another question. Who was this from?
That they would like different music there.
It might be more complex.
Oh, from Glenn. From Glenn. Do you play strictly upright, or do you also play electric?
No, actually, I had one of the first Fender basses in New York. I was with Teddy Charles. We were playing up in Toronto, and Hampton's band came through at the local theater, and I knew Quincy Jones from Seattle, and I knew he was with Hamp at the time, so we ran up to hear the band, and I could hear this wonderful bass being played, and I couldn't see a bass player. And then standing up in the back I saw Monk Montgomery with this guitar type bass. And I said, oh man, you know, nobody was playing with an amplifier in those days. So I thought, gee, that might be easier to play than the upright bass, because Teddy loved to play fast tempos and we didn't have a drummer. It was just vibes, guitar and bass. So I went down to 48th Street and bought one. And I borrowed an amplifier from Everett Hull, the guy that invented the Ampeg, and started playing it with Teddy, and it was fun. And the only jazz musicians that I got interested in it were Teddy and Johnny Carisi thought it was interesting. So I played it at some jam sessions with Johnny. And then I got hired by Stan Getz, and he just wanted the acoustic bass, so the Fender bass stayed in the corner. And I finally ended up selling it to Bill Anthony. He was going to Las Vegas and thought he could use it out there. And then 10 years later, I had to go out and buy another one because all the recording calls were on electric bass. But I still have one I can play. I played it when I was doing some society work with Peter Duchin. That was all on Fender bass because we were traveling a lot.
Well, there you go. So this was fun in spite of our technical difficulties up front. We're about at the end of our hour.
My computer is still saying connecting.
I know. It's going to be we haven't made a good showing of connections these days, apparently.
You need a better connection.
We need a better connection, maybe a jazz connection. But thanks so much for doing this. It's always fun to talk to you. It's more fun to hear you play, and one of these days we will do that again, certainly.
I hope so.
If nobody else has any other questions, I just want to thank everyone else for coming, for showing up to our Mondays with Mooch, and we'll continue these on Monday evenings as long as we can. Even if we do open up, we might just keep doing these as a way to connect to make connections if we can, technician wise. But
What I
certainly,
liked best about this was that I didn't have to drive to Red Bank.
well, there you go. Sorry about that. All right, you're in Westchester?
No, I'm in Rockland County, a
Oh,
new
Rockland.
city.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh-huh.
That's a hike.
It is a hike, yeah. Yeah, even gigs on Staten Island are a bit of a drive for me, you know.
Sure. Well, in any event, unless anyone has anything else, I see in the chat room, they're all thanking you and they're loving your music, and we appreciate that. I appreciate everybody coming. I don't have a yet. I can't divulge who will be on next week. I'm sure it'll be fun, and I'm sure you guys will enjoy it. So come on back. Any Monday evening at 7 o'clock, come on back and enjoy as much as you can, and visit us again. As usual, our after gig hang will continue for a little while, but um, we're going to end the official festivities at this point. And we'll have a little hang for anybody who wants to come hang and chat a little bit more. So thanks so much, and hopefully we'll see you all next week.
Thank you. Thank you again, Bill.
Okay. Bye.